Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. This is Marty Kaiser with our Friday edition of Real Estate Tidbits. Hope everyone is doing well. I'll go over a few different things today. Let's start off with a change of pace. We'll cover current sports. The NCAA basketball tournament is an ongoing thing. Right now they're down to, I believe it's the last something like 8 teams. After this weekend is over, they'll be down to the final 4. At this point, if I had to make a prediction, and the games have been very interesting to watch of late, they've had a lot of good teams playing, but I would make Arizona the favorite of the teams remaining. They seem to have a combination of a top team playing at their best right now. Some other really good teams that are still in it are Duke University, who's another number 1 seed. In fact, they're playing St. John's tonight, which should be a really competitive game. So keep an eye on that. After this weekend ends, the Final 4 will be, I believe it's next Saturday and Monday. The NBA season is winding down. We're entering the last month of the season. At this point, it looks like the 3 teams that are the strongest are Oklahoma City, the San Antonio Spurs, and the Boston Celtics. Boston's been rejuvenated with the return of Jason Tatum. He's coming off a serious Achilles tendon injury, and he was out for 10 months, and actually he's come back quicker than almost anybody in basketball history. It remains to be seen how much of his former skills he'll be able to have available when the playoffs start, but they're certainly stronger with him in there. And they're my favorite to be in the NBA championship from the East. In the West, I think the 2 dominant teams are Oklahoma City, who's the defending champion, and the San Antonio Spurs. Oklahoma City, by all accounts, is the favorite. They've got a very deep team, and in spite of a lot of injuries this year, they've had a tremendous season up to this point. San Antonio is the new kid on the block, a lot of young players. They haven't been in the playoffs now for, I think, about 7 years. However, the thing that they have is Victor Wembanyama. If he stays injury-free, he looks like he'll go down as one of the top 2 or 3 players that's ever played in the game and really revolutionizing basketball. He's a one-man force. He's 7'6", and he's got all the skills of a player that's 6'6". He can shoot the 3-point shot. He's a good dribbler and passer. He's very agile and mobile, and his defensive skills are just intimidating. He's by far the best defensive player in the league. So even though historically young teams like San Antonio need seasoning because the playoffs are a different game in the NBA, it'll be interesting to see how they do. And I wouldn't put it past Victor Wembanyama. He has the skill set to overcome teams that are a little bit better. So it should be exciting. The season, I believe, ends the last week of April. So keep an eye on that. Last but not least, you've heard me mention the Orlando Magic. They just came off a 6-game losing streak. And as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, they've been extremely disappointing. They have had a lot of injuries this year, but a lot of teams in the NBA have had a lot of injuries. And they just don't seem to be able to maximize their available talent. Unfortunately, when this type of scenario happens, you have to look at their star players, and you have to look, more importantly, at their coaching staff. Their coaching staff just doesn't seem to be very adaptable. The Magic have not done a very good job in close games. Their defense has really fallen off the cliff. Last year, they were a really good defensive team. This year, they've been a poor defensive team. There's something lacking. They don't seem to be kind of, from my vantage point, they don't seem as motivated. They're not seeming to play with the inspiration and effort that other teams are playing. And I think that unless something dramatic happens, they're going to have to get a new head coach. Also, their upper management is questionable. Their draft picks have not really performed as wanted, and they haven't really made any player acquisitions that have helped. Over the last couple years, the trades that they've made just have not panned out. So you've got to look at the upper management. So overall, as an Orlando Magic fan and an Orlando resident, they've been uber disappointing this year. So that's all about sports. So let's go into a little bit about our real estate market and what type of trends we're seeing and what do I expect in real estate. Well, the local market is holding its own, especially when you consider all the uncertainty worldwide with the Iranian war that's been going on for about 4 weeks now. With the war effort, of course, it depends on who you listen to, but I would say from a local vantage point, without obviously having access to all the secret security and secretive information that our leaders have, I would say the war at best has had mixed results. At worst, it's going to go down in history as being one of the most negative major events that we've experienced in a long time. The cost for the war is projected at more than $200 billion. It's clear, if you're an objective observer, that even though we've damaged Iran, done a lot of damage to both their infrastructure and their weapon capabilities and their nuclear weapon efforts, we have not put them out of business. They still have the ballistic missiles, which were evidenced by some of the missiles they've been shooting. And from all accounts, they still have materials spread out throughout the country that can be used to get their nuclear weapon industry back on. It probably delayed it some, but it didn't eliminate it. And it's clear that we don't have the capabilities at this point to eliminate it. The objectives of this war are still open to interpretation. As I mentioned during last week's podcast, and I feel even more strongly about it this week, I think our administration and President Trump's advisors are going to come out with verbal information over the recent future, probably no more than a month away or sooner than that, that says this was a very successful effort and they're going to pat themselves on their back. But I would take that with a tremendous grain of salt. That administration is known to be charitable about it. They embellish things to the utmost. If I embellished things in real estate like they embellished things on the world stage, I would have been out of business years ago and probably would have had the Florida Real Estate Commission revoke my license. In real estate, we're held to a high ethical standard. And if we do things that are blatantly false and are at the detriment of the consumer, it's very easy for us to either suffer a substantial fine or ultimately lose our license. Unfortunately, on the world stage, it seems like our current administration has been able to say whatever they want and not really have any consequences. You know, to give you an update on some of the verbiage going around, the Trump administration has said we're very close to a peaceful resolution with the crisis. They've put forth a 15-point framework for a peace deal, and I guess they're waiting to hear back on their latest version. However, what has come out in the media over the last few days is that pretty much Iran came out with their own counterproposal, which was far different than what we supposedly have requested and didn't address a lot of our major concerns. So it's very questionable. Ultimately, we'll probably come to some type of quote-unquote peace resolution, but the details at best are going to be open to interpretation. I think one thing that's clear is that our soldiers have performed phenomenally, as they always do, but that we've tremendously underestimated the wherewithal of the Iranian military and their leadership. They are simply not going to surrender. As I've mentioned before, they come from a fanatical background. They did a lot of good preliminary planning so that if they did have a major invasion of their country, so to speak, they were prepared to deal with it. They're not going to surrender. They're going to use that Straits of Hormuz as a negotiating wedge, and we're never going to ever be 100% comfortable that they're going to follow whatever they agree to with that. It's clear that they know that's a major leverage point and that it controls a significant amount of the world's oil flow. Our gas prices in the United States have already gone up $1. And the longer that this conflict goes on, the more our gas prices are going to go up. And it's also going to affect airplane fuel and stuff. We were looking at a big family vacation on a personal level, kind of like a dream vacation overseas. And the plane fares have gone up dramatically in the last couple of weeks from when we started looking. Hopefully, eventually they'll go down, but it's going to be a gradual process whenever they peak. But in the meantime, I think it's going to affect a lot of tourism business because people that are doing what I call more elective travel, more significant family vacations are going to have to make a decision if they're willing to pay these inflated prices. Some won't be able to afford it, and others are just going to feel it's poor value. So it definitely has already had an impact on our economics. Now, translating that to real estate, we're just entering what starts to be our busy season from Easter through the end of July. And it's definitely, you can see, had an effect on the momentum of getting into this season. Real estate's not terrible now by any means, but we definitely haven't gotten that momentum that we normally get. I know in a lot of the local markets that I extensively work, such as Hunters Creek and some of the more popular areas in the South and Southwest market, not only has market time increased on most homes, but actually our listing inventory has declined. And that's very unusual when you're in what I call more of a neutral real estate market and you're entering your busier season and listing inventory declines. And I think that can be 95% attributed to the Iranian conflict because there's a lot of people that are just uncomfortable, whether it's they're just uncertain, they don't want to make any major life changes. Some people are worried about their jobs, not only because of the conflict, but because of the uncertainty with AI, the lack of guardrails that AI has right now. There's just a lot of concern with a lot of people. Not related to the Iranian conflict, but has been all the confusion and political juggling with the TSA workers not getting paid. And some of the airports, like in Houston and Atlanta, are suffering with 4 and 5 hour waits. I know myself, unless I had to go somewhere, there's no way I'm going to wait 4 or 5 hours. I cancel my plans and wait until the government gets their act together. Now, supposedly, they came out with a plan that was signed last night to start paying the TSA workers again. So we'll have to see how quickly that starts and how quickly that can dissipate these waiting lines. Everybody wishes, obviously, that that does occur. I think one of the things that we should do sooner rather than later is we should replace all the TSA workers with private companies. Because as long as government employees are subject to the whim and caprice of our political structure, they can at any time, not fund them, and then we're back to the same thing again. We should make sure that paid employees are not at the whim and caprice of the government and are not getting paid. And I know there's been a lot of information that's come out recently that some of the smaller airports in the United States have private security and not TSA employees, and they seem to be functioning a lot better. They don't have these delays, and I'd say most of the consumers and airport management have been very happy with that. So that's definitely something we should consider. I did want to go into a couple of key points real estate-wise. There was an article that just came out by one of the information companies that's very well known in real estate and has been pretty accurate and proactive in their, not only in their real estate forecast, but in their real estate marketing. And that's homes.com. You know, and some of the key points that they brought up, and this just happened within the last couple of days. Now, this is on a national level, but some of the things they're saying is that home appreciation is slowing, which, of course, we've seen that in Florida. Now, they're saying nationally that inventory is increasing, but in Florida, we're not seeing that. So, you know, we'll have to wait and see. Now, one of the things that's been very noted is that first-time buyers have been saying that affordability hasn't improved. So it's been forcing them to either put their plans on hold to purchase, or it's made them compromise price, condition, or location. In Florida, we see a lot of that, probably more so than a lot of other states, because Florida's real estate since COVID for about a 3-year period increased dramatically. And so what ended up happening was what I call the affordability index was tremendously impacted. So what I mean by that is housing prices went hugely up in 21, 22, and 23, but salaries didn't go up. And Florida traditionally pays below average wages, which has always been a negative about living in Florida for some people, because unless you're in sales or you're in a real high profile occupation, like you're in the medical field, you're a lawyer, you're in the top of your profession in computers, or maybe you're a top quality engineer, kind of the majority of jobs, there's a lot of service jobs and they just don't pay well. Also, the benefits in a lot of the service jobs are mediocre. And especially with the government cutting back on healthcare benefits or healthcare premiums have been impacted, a lot of people are struggling in Florida. And so that really impacts first-time home buyers. And what you've seen not only in Florida but nationally with first-time home buyers is the median age has increased quite a bit. When we grew up, it was pretty common that people would buy their first home, when they were 30 or in some cases younger than that. But now the first-time home buyers average is a lot closer to 40. So that's a significant increase, and it's a little depressing for people because I don't think most people want to keep renting until they're 40 years old. Now, one thing you are seeing too on the market due to these affordability issues are most first-time customers are asking for concessions because their cash to close has been impacted with the higher prices. So when they combine that with also that houses are taking longer to sell, it's a lot more commonplace for a buyer to ask for closing cost concessions. And so it requires the realtor to really effectively counsel their sellers or their buyers on what's the best strategy to accomplish either side's goals. If you're a seller, of course, you want to get the highest price you can, but equally importantly, you don't want your house to be on the market forever. Because we know from experience that if a house is on the market for 90 days, it's just going to sell for a lot worse than it would have sold for had there been a more aggressive strategy employed. And unfortunately, there's still too many sellers that think that the real estate prices are like they were a few years ago, and they're putting their houses on the market at a higher price than they should have. So, it's just a different market. It requires a lot more nose to the grindstone. It requires a lot more data. It requires a lot more fact gathering, and it requires the realtor working in close conjunction with their customer, regardless of whether they're a buyer or a seller. And obviously, every state's different. And, speaking in the Orlando market, every neighborhood's different. There's some neighborhoods that are stronger than others. So that's why one of the things that I always do when I first meet with a customer is, besides going through a lot of the data that I've mentioned, but I really am very neighborhood specific, because that tremendously impacts the strategy for a seller or the flexibility for a buyer. So the more that a prospective customer has a game plan in mind, the more effectively they're going to accomplish their real estate needs effectively, promptly, and with less stress. So that's all for today. Keep a close eye out on these different areas that I'm mentioning. Enjoy our great weather. For sports fans, enjoy the NCAA basketball tournament. And this is Marty Kaiser out.